his first seizure happened just before he was 4. And like I said, we were in and out of hospitals with different neurologists. And, several of them had no idea what was going on. And they would just try medicine, send him home. And then he would still have seizures. So we went back to the pediatrician and we went back to the hospital. And so, like I said before, after about 2 to 3 weeks of continuous monitoring with the EEG attached to his head, they would just try different medicines and see what worked, what didn't work. And through that, and watching him, because he was on camera the whole time in the hospital, they came up with the diagnosis. So pretty quickly. His first seizure was end of August 2009, and he got the diagnosis, I'd say, end of September 2009. So within a month or so. And then that's when the doctor recommended. Well, he didn't really recommend Atkins. He recommended trying a lot of medicines. And Brandon was on 3 anti-seizure medicines. And he was just not himself at all. It was terrible. And we researched and found the ketogenic diet and the Atkins diet. And the doctor said, yeah, we don't like the ketogenic diet. It's too difficult, but you can try Atkins. And that was really hard doing alone without any help. But we tried it and it worked a bit. Number one, the medication wasn't completely making him seizure free. So it wasn't as if we put him on something and there were side effects, but he wasn't having seizures. He was still having seizures throughout the day, all day, every day, all kinds of seizures. This particular syndrome, you have every kind of seizure. So the absence, something called myoclonic, where your head just like collapses down, or he would just fall straight down, like they compared to like a puppet being dropped. So every kind of seizure. So the medicines really weren't working, and he was on 3 and he couldn't swallow pills. So I think Brandon remembers this, that we had to chase him around the house. He had this little toy car he'd ride around and to get away from us. And we had to hide the medicine in yogurt and food. And it was just, 3 times a day. It was torture. And I have a daughter also. So at the time she was 6 years old, and, she didn't know what was going on. And we read that we read that the Atkins diet first could help. And I was like, that's crazy eating. How's that going to help? But that was really the reason we tried it, because the medicines weren't working. His side effects were, he was tired all the time. He was like shaky. He wasn't concentrating well. We used to play a lot of board games. He couldn't even focus on playing games anymore. I had to pull him out of nursery school because he couldn't stay awake. He was having seizures there. And yeah, it's just terrible. Really bad. You name the side effect, he had it. And then he was angry. Do you remember that at all? My daughter, he had little matchbox cars he played with, but the medicine I think Keppra in particular, made him really angry. And he would just start throwing his little matchbox cars. And my daughter was very small, even though she was almost 3 years older. And she was like, ah. A neurologist did say, we don't do the ketogenic diet. We don't recommend the ketogenic diet, but you can try Atkins. And he sent us to a dietitian in New York City. And she basically said, here's the foods, watch the carbs, goodbye, good luck. Yeah. I didn't have really good guidance. There was nothing much on the internet at the time. Not much research either on how to do this for seizures. It was all about weight loss. So in the beginning, I would give him food. I would just give him protein, really, and not realizing I had to give him all the fat to supplement it. So he was just, it was really a disaster because I wasn't feeding him enough and he was sleeping hours and hours and he had no energy and he was crying and he wanted his cereal and he wanted his regular foods. And I tried giving him bacon and eggs and he still hates bacon, right? I'd make him drinks with whipped cream and heavy cream, hates whipped cream, doesn't like butter. I mean, so you can ask Brandon about what he remembers, but it was really difficult, really difficult.
My sister, who's 3 years older, I would get upset when she would be eating, the better food that I could not eat. And so she would usually eat in a different room than me a lot of the times. So, which she wasn't a fan of, but she got to sit in front of the TV and eat. So that was like our compromise there.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, neither of us were happy with the situation because I got to drink a lot of soda, which I did not like. And my sister wanted soda. She was not allowed to have all the soda.
The whole thing was a challenge, right? Because we went from being a normal family with 2 kids. We were on vacation when the first seizure happened, actually, a big family vacation. So from that moment on, it all changed. We had to leave our daughter with family there. We took him to the hospital. And I mean, it completely affected my daughter too, because I had to focus all my attention on Brandon. And basically, she needs a lot of attention. So I know it was hard on her. We went to therapy on Atkins for about 6 months. So a very good control. And the neurologist at Children's Hospital of Philadelphia said, if you don't switch to keto, you can't be my patient anymore, basically, because he needs to switch. She said, this is good, but he's still having seizures. And the more seizures you have, the more chance of brain damage and irreversible problems, right? So I said, oh, okay. So we switched, and then he went seizure free. So there you go. She was right. And then he stayed on the diet. So Atkins 6 months and then keto for another almost 3 years. But within that 3 years, after 6 months seizure free on keto, we started weaning the medicine. And he was on 3 of them, and it took about 6 months each. So it took about 1.5 years to become off all medicine. And then probably another year before he was off the diet. So it started at age 4, and then by like 7.5, it was pretty much done. Yeah, no, Atkins was really good. And I think if I had more help with it, it could have worked. But there was no real help. Like I said, the dietitians just said, here you go. And then once I actually started keto, I was like, this is so much better for me because here I have a meal plan and it tells me exactly what he should eat, how much carbs, how much fat. And they were monitoring him. Whereas before, it was just like, good luck, you're on your own. Once he was on the keto diet, we had to measure ketones and blood. There's a lot of testing that goes into it because it's much more extreme than Atkins. So we did blood work all the time and we were at the hospital every couple of months. So yeah, the whole family adjusted. My daughter dropped out of basically all of her after school activities, I think, and just wanted to be home after school for whatever reason. I guess she didn't want to be out because for a few months, we were in the hospital a lot. So she'd come home from school and we were gone at the hospital. So I think whenever she would come home, if the garage door was not open for her, she knew that something was wrong. So yeah, it affected everything. We didn't do family vacations for a while. We couldn't go out to eat anymore. We couldn't eat dinner as a family for a while.
When everything first started, I couldn't go to school, of course, so that was one thing. And then when I did go back to school, it was a lot of special things that were going on. I would have special meals. I'd have to leave a lot to do certain things. And although I don't remember a ton of it now, I know it was hard at the time to not be able to just go to school and do like go to extracurricular things after school. Camp.
Remember camp?
Oh, and camp. Yeah. So when school was over, and I would go to camp. I went to a day camp, and at the time it was at like a local swim club, and it was really hard because obviously even at that young age, you want the like independence of camp, of like going and being like with your friends for the whole day and being away from like your parents. It's like a fun thing to do, but that just wasn't possible for me. And I remember being very upset whenever like my mom would have to come in during lunchtime to give me my special food. And it was just kind of, at the time, I thought it was like embarrassing because I couldn't just have like the very simple experience of just leaving home for, a few hours to be with my friends. And it was things like that that were the most challenging, when everyone around me had to like watch and be like, what's happening? And I just felt like I just wanted some time, like to be a normal kid.
They said it could reduce his height. That's one thing they worry about, that you don't grow as much. I don't know. I mean, he's not short, but he's not, like, we thought he'd get taller.
Okay, well, I am the national average, thank you.
Yeah.
So.
Right. So maybe he's an inch or two shorter than he might have been, but health-wise, no, he was on so many supplements. Like, that's the thing. On Atkins, I was just winging it, and there were no real supplements. On keto, he had to take a citrate acid and different pills and vitamins and supplements. And, they really watched to make sure they did bone density tests. But maybe if he was on it long term, I think they don't know. I don't think you can really be on keto forever. He was only on it for a few years. So as far as we know, no damage. And as far as his ability, I don't know what I'm trying to say. Cognitive ability. Thank you. His cognitive ability obviously is very good. So a lot of kids who have seizures come out of it, but they're still regressed or back at a third grade level and don't progress as they should. But I'm going to brag a little, and he's in an all honors program in high school, and we're looking at colleges. So he's, who knows if he didn't have seizures, maybe he'd be even smarter, but he's doing great in that respect. And families really like to hear that too, because he wasn't doing great. There was a time when we were like, oh my God, he could be, mentally challenged for the rest of his life. We didn't know.
It was very surprising when it worked so quickly. At the time, there weren't many people at all that were doing the diet, so I don't think they really knew what was going to happen. So when it worked, it was kind of amazing, because I went from having seizures every day to the Atkins Diet, where I was still having a lot of seizures, just not as many, to suddenly being seizure free and having what would look like a normal seizure-free life, which is what happened, and it's what I still live now. So, and to this day, I'm still one of the few cases where people are completely seizure-free, and nothing from that time really affects me anymore in my day-to-day life, which is really kind of amazing. Now I'm able to have like a fully normal life. Seizure, when I was on the diet, when I had seizures, my life was totally, changed drastically from the first seizure. I couldn't do anything after school. I could barely go to school I couldn't go to school for a while. And when I eventually did, I had to have a teacher's a aide with me at all times to make sure I was safe and to make sure I was eating the right food, to make sure I wasn't doing anything that could be dangerous. I had to have supervision 24/7. And now, once I was seizure free, I was able to return to doing everything that I did before the diet and do so many new things. I was able to go back to playing sports after school. I played basketball and soccer. And to so many families, when your kid has a seizure, it's hard to imagine that you would ever see them playing sports in the future, because even to someone without seizures, that can be so dangerous. So being the diet totally changed my life and made it right back to where I would be if I had never had a seizure. I've been completely seizure free for over like 10 years now, and it, knock on wood that nothing happens, but I've been off the diet now too for a long time and totally seizure free.
If you're sitting there and you're pumping your children full of medicines and there's a plausible alternative, why wouldn't you just try it? Like, it's not going to work for everybody, but it's worth giving it a shot.